Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a plunge into a really unique and I guess you could say provocative guide. It's called The Black Man's Guide Out of Poverty for Black Men Who Demand Better.
Yeah, and this is definitely not your typical self-help book. The source material we're looking at has this very raw, no holds barred take on things, societal issues, personal responsibility. It aims to empower Black men, but with a very direct and unconventional approach.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to pull out the key insights from this bold guide. We'll unpack its arguments, some of which are quite complex, look at the facts it presents, and lay out its views without judgment so you can consider them for yourself.
Okay.
Okay, let's get into it. Where does it start? Well, the guide kicks off with a really powerful immediate claim. It says, quote, "Black males are the most suffered group in the United States today." That's a pretty strong statement to open with. How does it support that?
It does try to back it up, yeah, with some pretty sobering statistics. Take education, for instance. The guide states nearly half, 50% of Black males drop out of high school, which is a really sharp contrast with white males, where it says over 75% are expected to graduate.
Wow, 50% versus 75%.
Right. And it links this to lower scores on standardized tests, which then impacts college prospects, future earnings. And then you look at STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math, crucial areas, right? Black men are about 12% of the population, but the guide says they earn only 6% of the degrees in those fields.
So a clear disadvantage shown in education and future careers. And it also connects being disadvantaged, particularly youth, to higher crime rates. What does the data it presents show there?
Yeah, it draws that link pretty directly. The source claims that Black men, again, 12% of the population, make up 40% of the prison population, 40%. And their incarceration rates are described as 8 times that of whites.
8 times, that's huge.
It is. And maybe the most shocking stat it cites is that 1 in every 2 Black men will be arrested before they turn 23. 1 in 2. And the guide is insistent, these aren't just theories, these are facts. It really urges you to look at the cumulative social, time, economic, and financial costs over history to really get the depth of the problem, not just, as it says, mere fleeting glances.
Okay, so after painting that really stark, sobering picture, the guide takes a bit of a surprising turn, doesn't it? It starts talking about the secret to life, the secret to happiness. This is where the philosophy really comes in.
It does, yeah. It pivots quite dramatically.
Yeah.
It argues that the real point, the purpose of life, the true one and only sole source of happiness is actually other people.
Other people, not money, power, fame.
Nope. It directly refutes those common ideas: money, power, glamour, fame. So if you just think about it enough, you'll realize that connection with others is the inevitable conclusion. It's the only source.
That's interesting. And it uses a fantastic analogy to make this point clear, involving video games. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. It's a pretty clever comparison, actually. The guide says, look at even the most advanced game console, a PS4, Xbox One, whatever. With all the games, the sound systems, it's still a finite, limited entity.
Okay, finite. Limited.
Oh, yeah, it's not conscious, it is not sentient. It can't think for itself. But humans, it says, are infinite.
Infinite? How does it mean infinite? Not living forever, surely.
No, not infinite life expectancy. Infinite in their potential interactions, their reactions. People are dynamic, conscious, sentient. They have their own minds. That makes them, according to the guide, infinitely more interesting, engaging, and challenging than any machine, any console.
Ah, I see. The infinite complexity of other people versus the finite limits of an object.
Exactly. And this ties back to the guide's concept of finiteness, meaning your own life, your consciousness, your self-awareness will end. So it urges you to put your life in that ultimate context and engage with that human infinity while you can.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. This guide, as we said, doesn't shy away from controversy. It looks really hard at societal trends, especially government programs and their impact on women and marriage. And it connects this straight back to the challenges facing Black men. This section has some very provocative claims.
It definitely does. It's quite pointed here. The source basically claims that government programs have effectively become a kind of government husband substitute.
A government husband substitute.
Yeah, and it argues this has led to increased promiscuity and made, settling down and marrying a less attractive option for women. It goes so far as to state very boldly that these programs have spoiled women, making them, and this is the guide's strong phrasing, completely unmarriageable.
Wow. That's incredibly strong language.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind that claim?
Well, the argument presented is that girls who are raised, let's say, more by a government check than by a present father,
Hmm.
they might lack the ability to sympathize, to be selfless, or to really consider others, and they can become quite demanding, it suggests, without necessarily achieving much themselves.
So, given that really controversial take on societal changes, what does the guide say this means for men who are actually looking for a partner?
Well, it contends that basically no man, regardless of his race, can really compete with what the government offers women. It mentions trillions of dollars potentially available for things like food, healthcare, education, housing, childcare, transportation. It even cites that political campaign Julia as an example of this cradle-to-grave support.
Okay. And beyond the financial aspect.
Beyond that, it asserts the government holds women to absolutely no standards. Whereas a man, it says, would rightly expect things like loyalty, fitness, contribution to the household. So the guide concludes that this whole situation has stripped men, and it emphasizes, particularly black men, of what it calls the most important thing in their lives, a wife and family, leaving them, in its view, with a pointless one, a kind of listless life void of true agency and purpose.
That's a bleak outlook. And following on from that, the guide then really challenges the common narratives about why poverty exists among black men. Specifically, it takes aim at the discrimination argument, claiming it's not the full story, maybe not even the real reason.
Yeah, it tackles that head on. The source says, look, everybody talks about the discrimination argument because it's publicly acceptable.
Hmm.
But it claims that behind closed doors, people discuss alternative theories. Things like laziness or a lack of work ethic, maybe poor family upbringing, or even genetic differences.
Okay, so it acknowledges those other theories are out there.
It acknowledges they're discussed, yes. But then it asserts that neither discrimination nor things like laziness are the true fundamental causes. Although it concedes that elements of both might describe some disparities, you see.
So if it dismisses those as the primary drivers, what's the guide's own alternative explanation? What's its core theory here?
The guide's central theory is pretty provocative. It argues that black men are essentially the unknowing pawns of an elaborate political game, and it makes a shocking comparison, saying this game is comparable to slavery in terms of the damage it causes.
Wow, a political game. How does it claim this works?
It argues that politicians perpetuate this fraud, as it calls it,
Yeah.
by hiding ulterior motives behind good intentions. And they rely on people not thinking beyond what the guide calls stage one thinking.
Stage one thinking?
What's that?
A little-
It means just looking at the immediate, obvious effect of something, like a government program helping someone today, without considering the deeper, potentially negative long-term consequences. The claim is that these programs effectively kicked black men out of society, replacing them with a government check.
And it uses an analogy for this too, right? Something about a fighter plane.
Yeah, a really powerful one. It asks you to imagine a brand new F-22 fighter plane stuck in a hangar. Just condemned to sit and rot your entire life, never once allowed to fly and achieve your full potential. It then asks, how many black doctors or engineers might exist today if they weren't discouraged by a constant talk of racism and privilege?
So the underlying message there seems to be about potential being suppressed by a narrative.
Exactly. And the guide sees a kind of hope in this, actually. It says if defeatism is the main problem, if it's this narrative holding people back, then maybe nobody's actually holding you down.
Mhm.
And therefore, all you have to do to be successful is go and do it. It puts the agency back on the individual.
Okay, so shifting from those big external factors and societal critiques, the guide then gets very practical, very direct. It gives advice on personal pitfalls, things it frames as actions that can seriously mess up your life. These are pretty blunt warnings.
They are extremely blunt, no sugarcoating here. It lays out several key things to avoid. First off, what it calls illegitimate births. It cites that statistic, 72% of children in the black community born outside of marriage, and it calls getting a girl pregnant unintentionally the absolute #1 worst life-crippling mistake you can make, something that will, quote, at least ruin you for 20 years. The advice is very strong.
Use contraception.
Okay, #1 worst mistake. What other common traps does it highlight?
Well, it stresses avoiding bad company and definitely avoiding crime. It states flat out that any criminal record is basically a death knell for your career, your job prospects. It slams doors to elite institutions and condemns you, in the guide's words, to the ghetto culture tribe forever.
Harsh. What else? Divorce. It warns that divorce is typically horrible for men. You're looking at alimony, child support, losing assets. Finance as debt is called a constant mental drain that essentially makes you enslave yourself. And housing. It actually challenges the whole American dream of homeownership.
Really? How so?
It argues that owning a home can be a huge liability that anchors you, especially now, when the job market often requires you to be mobile to move for work. A house can trap you.
That's a counterintuitive take. What about those maybe boring but essential expenses, like insurance, taxes?
Right, things people often resent paying. But the guide calls health and car insurance absolutely necessary and vital expenses. It warns the consequences of not having them can be utterly devastating. It gives examples like, a $25,000 hospital bill just for appendicitis if you don't have health insurance, or getting hit with a $2.7 million lawsuit if you hit a child with your car and lack insurance. Even a simple fender bender, it says, could lead to a $120,000 lawsuit.
Oof. Those are scary numbers. And taxes.
Taxes. The advice is memorable. Treat the IRS and your state tax agency like the mafia. Pay your taxes. Just pay them, because if you don't, you're facing fees, damage to your credit report, and just immense amounts of lost time trying to sort it out.
Okay, treat the IRS like the mafia. Got it. Now, let's talk education. This guide really turns conventional wisdom on its head here, especially for escaping poverty. What's its core, almost brutally pragmatic argument about why you should even go to college?
It's incredibly direct. It states, quote, "The only, and I mean only, purpose of an education is to make more money. Full stop."
Only to make money. What about learning for its own sake?
It dismisses that. It laughs at the idea that you can't put a price on education, pointing straight at soaring tuition costs. And it's scathing about what it calls stupid degrees.
Uh-oh. Which ones fall into that category?
Things like women's studies, ethnic studies, journalism, music. It calls them worthless, basically, leading to joblessness, huge student debt. It even argues that real education learning stuff is technically 100% free thanks to libraries and the internet.
So it's not just criticizing certain degrees. It seems to view the whole system with suspicion. It calls it a bubble or a scam.
It absolutely does. The guide frames the entire education industry, from kindergarten right through college, as a massive scam designed mainly to provide employment for lazy people with worthless degrees. It claims that children are merely the excuse for all the professors, teachers, administrators to rake in over $1 trillion a year.
Wow. That's quite an indictment of the system.
It is, and it specifically points out how minorities, in its view, are often steered towards these hyphenated ethnic or victim studies. It calls this a particularly disgusting and betraying aspect, essentially impoverishing their own communities. The advice is basically ignore the brainwashing, use reasoned arguments, logic, math, and the reality principle when you pick a major. Focus on the outcome.
Okay, so if those stupid degrees are out, what fields does the guide recommend for actually getting a high wage and achieving financial mobility?
It says you should pursue degrees or fields that are, frankly, difficult, are hard, aren't fun. Things that are likely going to torpedo your social life while you study them.
Sounds appealing.
Yeah. The emphasis is on doing something everybody wants, but nobody wants to do. It contrasts, say, a teacher's average wage, maybe $19 an hour, with a smartphone programmer making $150 an hour. And it argues, pretty bluntly, that teachers often choose that path because they don't want to work hard or do math.
Ouch. Any other recommendations besides high-tech fields?
Yes, definitely. It strongly highlights the trades or vocations, things like plumbing, electrical work, welding. These are often overlooked, it says, but can be very high-paying because, again, they involve things everybody needs, but nobody wants to do.
Makes sense. And there's also a really strong, maybe uncomfortable warning in this section about something called the black tax and also the celebrity trap.
Yes, very pointed warnings there. The guide asserts that the behavior of some black men, the ones who just plain don't care, forces all black men to effectively pay the black tax, meaning you basically have to try twice as hard as your white contemporaries just to get the same level of success or recognition. It's extra burden. And then there's the rap athlete celebrity trap.
Right, the lure of fame.
Exactly. It warns that this allure blinds so many young black men. They see the stars, but they ignore the impossible odds. Like, maybe 1 in 10,000 musicians actually make it big. So they end up squandering their youth, their potential, chasing these near impossible dreams instead of pursuing solid, viable careers like becoming an engineer or an electrician.
A focus on realistic paths versus long-shot dreams.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving beyond education. The guide also paints a pretty grim picture of the wider economy and just the nature of most jobs today. It really doesn't sugarcoat the real working world.
Not at all. It talks about a permanent deterioration in the U.S. economy, particularly since the Great Recession. It cites things like a high youth unemployment rate, maybe 11%, and estimates that maybe 50% of people in their 20s are underemployed.
Underemployed meaning.
Meaning they have degrees, maybe even advanced degrees, but they're stuck working menial jobs like retail or food service. And because of this desperation in the job market, the guide argues that basically all jobs suck.
All jobs. That's a sweeping statement. Why?
Because it claims employers can capitalize on this desperation, this leads to lower pay, something it calls progressive credentialism, like needing a master's degree for a job that realistically requires maybe an 8th grade level of skill. And it also describes workplaces filled with corporate sadism, petty bosses, unreasonable managers, and constant political infighting and backstabbing.
Okay, that sounds frankly awful. A toxic environment, as the guide calls it. So what are its survival strategies if you find yourself stuck in a job like that?
It offers a few pretty pragmatic options. One is hustle, work extra hard, work smarter, but only if that extra effort has to be recognized, like if it leads to a raise or promotion.
And if it doesn't get recognized?
Then the guide says there's nothing wrong with doing the minimum. Just clock in, do what's required, clock out. See the job purely as a tool to get money to live your actual life outside of work. And crucially, it advises learning to mentally check out.
Mentally check out.
Yeah. Acknowledge that most jobs won't actually use your full brain power. The author shares his own experience, saying even as a chief credit analyst, he was mostly doing data entry and some occasional writing. He estimates he spent maybe 6 hours a day just idle, mentally checked out, while still physically present.
Interesting coping mechanism.
Yeah.
But what about escaping that environment altogether? The guide makes a strong case for entrepreneurship, calling it the best career.
It does. It calls entrepreneurship really the only way to be truly rich, successful, and actually happy with your work life, especially given that sadistic corporate environment it describes. But it's quick to add a major caveat. It's not for everybody. It takes serious psychological rigor.
Okay, so it's tough. What's the absolute key to making it work, according to the guide?
The number one thing is having a good idea. And a good idea isn't just something you think is cool. It has to be about producing what other people want, not just what you'd like to produce. It gives some pretty funny or maybe sad examples from the author's banking days of terrible ideas, like a cereal restaurant or yet another sports bar, which apparently have a 95% failure rate.
Right, focus on market demand, not just passion. So, for someone starting out, maybe without a lot of money, what kind of business does it recommend? What are the hallmarks?
It strongly advocates for low-capital companies, businesses you can start without needing huge investments. It gives examples like someone starting dance classes with just a $250 investment making $46K a year. Or someone selling dead Osama bin Laden t-shirts online right after the news broke, making a $100K profit in just 2 days. Or even early YouTube stars like Jenna Marbles, apparently spending maybe $4K but earning millions.
So low startup cost is key. What else?
Scalability. Can you start it small, maybe part-time while you still have your day job, and then grow it? And also, fewest working parts, which interestingly translates mostly to minimizing your reliance on other humans.
Fewer humans. Why?
Because, the guide argues bluntly, humans are unreliable. Employees can be lazy, incompetent, or sue you. Partners can betray you. So the advice is stark. Never hire employees and never take on partners. If you can possibly avoid it, keep it simple, keep control.
Wow, okay. Very self-reliant approach. Any final advice on starting?
Yeah. Start it now. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Accept that it will take time. You'll probably face failure along the way, but perseverance is key. Keep going, learn, adapt, and eventually it suggests you'll find success. Be prepared for intense work, though it expects at least 60 hours a week. But it argues this work will be enjoyable, challenging, and purposeful because it will be for your company 100% benefiting you.
Right, the payoff is owning your own destiny. Now we get to another really controversial area. Relationships and the role of women. The guide has incredibly strong opinions here, warning that women can, quote, utterly and totally destroy you, even if you succeed financially. What's the advice?
Well, it actually proposes a range of approaches. One, perhaps the most extreme, is just avoid women altogether. It likens some men who do this to Nikola Tesla, just completely focused on their work.
Okay, that's one option. What about for men who do want relationships?
For them, it advises taking a very logical, emotionally free approach. It claims that women today are fundamentally not what they were back in the 1950s, that they've changed for the worse.
Change for the worse. Due to what, according to the guide?
It points to factors like feminism, those government programs we discussed earlier. It states that women now often prioritize their careers, education, friends, even illegitimate children, way above men in building a family. Yet it claims they still require men to support them financially or emotionally.
Okay, that's a very critical perspective.
Well,
So, given these assertions, what specific things should a man actively look for, or maybe more importantly, avoid in a potential partner?
The guide gets very specific here. First, it says a girl really needs to know and love her father. It claims fatherless girls are often, and again, this is the guide's very harsh term, damaged goods, saying they might have mental problems, hatred, and distrust for men, and that government check-induced entitlement mentality.
Wow. Okay. What else to avoid?
It gives a strict rule. Do not date, wed, or marry single moms. Reasoning is that you'll always be in third place behind her and her child. Your needs won't come first. It advocates finding women who support themselves financially and carry their weight in the relationship. Be wary of hypocrites. It warns those who talk about equality but still expect the man to do all the heavy lifting, financially or otherwise.
Any other red flags mentioned?
Yes. It cautions against dating feminists, saying they tend to view any hurdle as sexism and can become whiny professional victims. Religious girls are also flagged as a complex problem. Not all, but many, it claims, are not sincere and might use religion to control or avoid responsibility. It even cites research suggesting some religious women rank their husbands as low as #9 on their priority list, after God, church, kids, etc.
Number 9.
Ouch. Yeah. And it also touches on the painful reality for some black men that their own families might view dating outside their race as traitorous. So the guide's conclusion on finding a partner is pretty stark. It says finding a stable, reliable, self-supporting, pro-sex, beautiful, sane girl is incredibly rare, maybe 1 in 100.
1 in 100. Those are terrible odds.
It's pretty grim. So the advice is essentially be extremely selective. Find that rare good girl who will actually support you, not destroy you. Oh, and one specific red flag it mentions. Avoid women who insist on hyphenating their last name upon marriage. Sees it as a sign of trouble.
Okay, a lot of warnings there. So if a man does find this rare partner or decides to build a family, how does the guide approach marriage and family life itself?
Well, first, it states very clearly that marriage is first and foremost for having kids. It argues marriage becomes pointless if you aren't going to have kids. In that case, maybe just cohabitate or even live separately.
Marriage equals kids, essentially. And if you do have kids,
Then you absolutely must invest heavily, intelligently, and consistently in the family. It requires being selfless and altruistic. And it outlines 6 essential things children need. Number 1, a stable nuclear family. 2 parents, present and actively engaged.
okay, stable nuclear family. What else?
Number 2, adequate finances. Enough money so the family isn't a burden on others or constantly stressed. 3, actual parenting, which ideally means one parent staying home, at least when kids are young. 4, maintaining the marriage. Avoid the divorce bomb because of its devastating impact on kids.
Makes sense. What are the last 2?
Number 5 is tough, fatherly love. This is distinct from motherly love, it argues. It's focused on preparing children for the harsh realities of adult life, like insisting they pursue a practical STEM major instead of something fun but less viable. And finally, number 6. The ultimate goal is fostering independence in your children, preparing them to stand on their own 2 feet.
Right. Raising capable adults.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap things up, the guide takes one final step back, looking at the really big picture. It urges you to consider what happens after your life is over, the idea of legacy. This puts everything in that ultimate context it mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It emphasizes that, look, your individual life will end, but the world keeps going, and your real influence, your immortal reputation, is largely felt after you're gone. And this reputation, it says, really boils down to 3 key things.
Yeah, okay, what are those 3 things?
First, your family. How will they remember you as a strong, providing father? Or the opposite, a deadbeat, an absentee parent. Second, your country community. Your responsibility goes beyond just your family. Are you an informed citizen? And it specifically urges the Black community here to wake up and really scientifically examine the political policies affecting their communities. Places like Detroit, East St. Louis, Are these policies actually working or just perpetuating problems?
So family, community, what's the third element of legacy?
The third is your personal works. These are your individual accomplishments, your interests, the things you create or do that improve and inspire other people's lives. And importantly, it stresses these don't have to be world-changing or famous things. It gives examples ranging from wood carving or playing music to being skilled in marksmanship or cooking, things you master and perhaps share.
So it's about the impact you leave through family, community engagement, and your own unique contributions. With all that laid out, what is the guide's final, really potent call to action for the listener? What's the ultimate message it leaves you with regarding this legacy?
It really challenges you directly. It asks, do you want future generations, especially young Black men, to look back at your life and see you as a hero? It paints this picture. Maybe you could be the one who leads Black men to outperform everyone else, becoming top engineers, top earners. Maybe you helped cure cancer. But then it brings it right back down to earth. None of that potential, none of that legacy will ever happen if you just accept mediocrity, victimhood, commonness, and self-pity. And it ends with that stark, simple reminder attributed to William Shatner. You are going to die. The message is crystal clear. Life is finite. Don't waste it. Don't squander that potential.
Wow, what an incredibly direct, unfiltered, and definitely provocative deep dive into the Black man's guide out of poverty. This guide certainly offers that raw perspective we talked about, really challenging a lot of conventional thinking on responsibility, society, success, happiness.
It really does. It asks us, it asks you, the listener, to look at your life, your world with this critical, sometimes deeply uncomfortable honesty. Now, whether you agree with every single point it makes or not, it undeniably provides a powerful framework for thinking about self-empowerment, and it maintains this relentless focus on what it believes are the true drivers of a meaningful, successful life.
Yeah, definitely forces us to ask some tough questions. What external narratives are we just accepting without question? And maybe more importantly, what internal power, what agency are we underestimating in shaping our own reality, our own purpose? Lots to think about there. Until next time, keep thinking critically and keep exploring deeply.